Tonight, punches thrown, police sources attacked and flares let off during anti-lockdown demonstrations, even after Daniel Andrews announced the easing of restrictions across Melbourne. Our reporter will have all the details coming up shortly. Also, with less than 2 weeks to go until America decides, Donald Trump and Joe Biden face off in the second and final presidential debate. But how did the public react? You can let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. A national shame. The Aged Care Royal Commission hears that 50 people in residential homes across the country are sexually assaulted each week. Later in entertainment, Channel 7 holds their 2021 upfronts, and despite one big name returning to our screens, there's plenty of shows that won't be coming back to the network. Good evening, it's just past 7:45pm here in Melbourne. Thanks for your company on this Sunday evening. To our top story now, and it's been a week since Daniel Andrews announced the easing of restrictions, with Melburnians once again allowed to get haircuts and travel more than 5 kilometres from their homes. But how did people react, and were most obeying the rules? Reporter Lincoln Holmes has the details.
The news that hundreds had been hoping for months.
With numbers low, I'm very pleased to make the following announcements.
The news that part of Victoria's coronavirus restrictions would be eased came through to Victorians last Sunday.
We want people in Melbourne to stay in Melbourne, follow the rules and get the numbers in Melbourne as low as they are in regional Victoria, and then we'll all be able to move freely around our state when it's safe and doesn't put at risk everything that we've been able to build as a community.
It may not have been exactly what Melburnians wanted, but it is a slight reprieve from the Stage 4 restrictions.
We'll all be working very hard, and I ask Victorians to keep working very hard.
The easing of restrictions includes the 5 kilometre radius, instead of being 5 kilometres, being extended to 25 kilometres.
We need to keep prompting people to test more broadly if they're symptomatic at all.
And after a couple of months of not being able to have a haircut or getting an ISO haircut, hundreds have now flocked to their hairdressers, with waiting queues of up to 5 days.
I got here at 7:45.
After it was announced that hairdressers were reopening.
What time do you think you'll be here till?
11:59 tonight.
Hundreds are just happy to get back out of the house and enjoy the Melbourne that they knew before the Stage 4 lockdown.
With case numbers this low, it moves less to be about numbers and is much more about the stories that sit behind those numbers.
Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
Authorities have arrested demonstrators at a Melbourne protest against coronavirus restrictions. Police used pepper spray amid scuffles with some of the demonstrators at the Shrine of Remembrance. The protest started at about 2pm on Friday and is one of the larger events of its kind over the past few months against Premier Daniel Andrews' measures to control infections. Cameras captured aggression towards police horses, demonstrators whacking the animals in violent bursts of anger, with one protester heard yelling that a horse was racist. The demonstrations come as Melburnians clock up more than 100 days of lockdown. New South Wales Health are urging any attendees of the Bathurst 1000 race to monitor for COVID-19 symptoms after remnants of the virus were found in raw sewage. If they do develop symptoms, authorities say they should be tested as soon as possible, and local residents have also been warned that anyone who does present with even the mildest symptoms should get tested immediately and self-isolate until they have a result. Wastewater and sewage analysis has been used as a pandemic tracking tool by governments worldwide since July, according to New South Wales Health, which includes doing so at multiple sites in Victoria and SA. The warning raises the potential of a significant outbreak given the crowds in Bathurst this year, although the pandemic did put a big dent in the year's numbers for the popular 4-day race. 44 men have been charged and 16 children have been saved from potential abuse in a major crackdown on alleged child sex offenders. The operation, which was run by the Australian Federal Police, was launched last year after a tip-off that thousands of men worldwide were sharing child abuse images over a cloud-based storage system. That's now led to arrests across the country, with a total of 350 charges laid against the alleged offenders. AFP Commander Jamie Strauss said in July recent investigations had shown children were being groomed and then blackmailed to produce more and more extreme material, with the fear that if they didn't do it, it would be shared, the pandemic worsening the situation with more children online than ever before. Heading overseas now, when Donald Trump and Joe Biden have attacked each other in the final US presidential debate as the candidates spar over coronavirus and healthcare. US correspondent Jackson Gosnell joined our live post-debate coverage with more.
I just wrapped up a call with the Trump campaign. They called it a huge win tonight, saying that the president certainly won this debate. But I will say, from an unbiased standpoint, it was much better than the first presidential debate. I think there was clear bias on the part of Fox News anchor Chris Wallace at the first debate. And right now we had Kristen Welker of NBC News. She kept a steady hand on things. I think she done a really great job. There was limited interruptions. I think the mic muting helped a lot. It only had to be done a few times, but it kept things moving smoothly. Now, when I was on the call with the Trump campaign, a big topic for them was fracking as it relates to Joe Biden. He has been on the record multiple times, over 10 times, saying that he will ban fracking, and tonight he says he won't. So then he challenged President Trump to go find a video of him saying that he was going to ban fracking and put that up on his website. Well, that's not going to be very difficult for President Trump to do, because there are dozens of videos out there of Biden saying that his own website says he's going to ban fracking. So who really knows what to believe as it relates to that? But I think the American people got a lot of good information tonight. Hopefully that will go with them to the ballot box as they decide who should be the next president on November 3rd.
I noticed too, the states that the Trump campaign are really focusing hard on, those Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania and all of that. That obviously there's a lot of oil there. And at one point, Vice President Biden said that at some point they will close the oil industry. And the president made a very big point of that, because they're really looking for those voters that are working in those oil industries to vote for President Trump. And that's why there was a lot of debate there around fracking. That's really interesting. We understand that there's a lot of ballot voting happening at the moment. Some odd 30 million people have already voted. Walk us through this process and some of the perils that may be faced on both sides about doing mail-in voting.
So first, I'll speak to your point about Joe Biden and the campaign trail as it relates to those swing states. So we have seen a lot of hard campaigning in those key battleground states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida. The Trump campaign has really focused their efforts there over the last few days. Whereas, I mean, it's a true point from the President Trump campaign. Biden has literally been at home in his basement the last 4 days. So I'm wondering if that's going to play a role in this election, the lack of campaigning on Biden's part in these key states that usually determine who wins the election. As for mail-in voting, it's going to be a nightmare. I think it's going to take a lot of time to actually know who is winning this presidency. Many states have passed extensions that will allow votes to be counted days after, even in some cases weeks after the election day. So all those mail-in votes could flood in, and we may not know the day after election day who is the next president of the United States. It's very scary, and quite frankly, I think a lot of people are worried about not knowing.
And with less than 2 weeks to go before the election, we've also been tracking a number of key swing states that could decide the result and have been focused on heavily by campaigners. Chief reporter Jack Hunt has the details.
This currently is the road to 270 electoral college votes. Now, you can see at the moment through the polls, Biden is winning. But there are a few key toss-up states that the vice president needs to win. Now, in 2016, let me show you what the map looked like, because it looked very, very different. In 2016, the map was like that. All red. You can see Florida, all of these two, and pay attention to these two states here, Minnesota and Wisconsin, as well as Pennsylvania. Now, take a look at that. That is what really got President Trump the election in 2016. And now, take a look. They've gone blue. Now, I see that we've got this comment here, take polls with a grain of salt. Well, my favourite saying comes from Sarah Palin. She was the vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party. Polls are only good for two things, strippers and cross-country skiers. So I agree, polls with a grain of salt. But you can see here, all of these polls are suggesting that Biden is winning. And you can see here, Pennsylvania, that's got 20 electoral votes. You heard tonight in the debate, President Trump really going hard after Pennsylvania. Now, let's say President Trump is able to flip that and he gets that. Biden still wins. Let's say the president gets Minnesota. He got that. Michigan, I should say, rather. Say he gets that. He got that in 2016. Still, Biden isn't won, but Trump hasn't won either. Let's say he gets Wisconsin. Once again, Trump hasn't necessarily won, Biden hasn't won either. You need some of these really big states down here, like Florida to turn, and Georgia to turn. But still, you still haven't reached that magical number of 270 points. Trump would need to get North Carolina, but still there, he's one electoral vote off. He's still one off. So he needs to turn all of these states, which are leaning Democrat at the moment. He could maybe try and get Ohio. That would get him. If he got that, that would get him over. Maybe if he was able to flip Arizona, that would get him over. But you can see how this map, as we go to air right now in concession with the polls, all of this blue here in 2016, it was Republican. And we understand that the campaigns are very worried about it.
Back home now, and two toddlers have escaped a childcare centre on the Gold Coast, caught by passers-by just seconds before running onto a busy road. Amelia Finney's daughter Skylar, who turned 2 on Tuesday, is one of the two children, and she told the ABC that the childcare centre was unaware the children had escaped. Dashcam footage captures the moment the youngsters run along Foxwell Road before school children and another woman stop them. Ms Finney said Skylar will not be returning to the childcare centre, even after saying that they were very apologetic, but she thinks it isn't right they got out and she wasn't notified. Queensland Police spokesperson says they were making inquiries into the matter. And staying in Queensland, agriculture workers have been given the all clear to cross the border until at least late December, but there's been calls for backpackers to have more allowances to continue their work. Our reporter Connor Alfagay has this special report.
1 hour north of Brisbane, in the fruit bowl of the southeast, lies a humble family-owned farm and a puppy named Panda. Born into a virus-ravaged world, her name is derived from the word pandemic. The 8-month-old is emblematic of the struggles strawberry farmers have faced during the pandemic.
They've been very challenging, right from the contamination period to oversupply in strawberries, and this year, particularly with COVID.
A chronic labour shortage, the latest COVID-related crisis to hit already struggling farmers.
Yeah, we're a pretty resilient mob. Either that or stupid.
6 News was granted exclusive access to Loverberry, a Wammy-ran strawberry farm run by President of the Strawberry Growers Association, Adrian Schultz, and his wife, Mandy. They secured a workforce early on, but others haven't been so lucky. This mandarin farmer forced to bulldoze hectares of fruit.
The reason that we're removing them is because there's no clear end in sight to the labour shortages.
As borders shut, backpackers returned home, leaving farms understaffed and farmers scrambling to find local workers.
I think the seasonality, location and a lack of understanding is maybe the problem that is about getting young Australians into the workforce. I don't think you should call them lazy.
Mandy says misconceptions, not generous welfare payments, drove locals away from farm work.
And the ones that are sitting there, sitting on job seeker, not doing anything, they're probably not going to handle the work if they're that lazy.
Predictions that produce prices could almost double by Christmas ignited pleas from farmers and the government.
Have a go. Come to regional Australia. Bring your mobile. Have that Instagram moment because they're, up a ladder, picking fruit, blue sky in the background, wonderful country breeze, wonderful friends around. You'll find more friends. You might find the love of your life out in regional Australia.
While it seems like a rather bizarre selling point,
a lot of their experience on our farm particular is like a part of their life they won't forget. Some people have fallen in love and gone and have children.
What is the best thing about your job? Here in the farm? Well, first of all, I find a kind of a girlfriend, so it's very good.
The workers at Loverberry we spoke to, full of nothing but high praise for a job that they say has given them so much.
And you've been working on the farm for 3 years?
4, yeah.
Oh, wow. Why do you keep coming back?
Just because how I work seasonally, I work overseas, and it just works really well for me, and it's a good farm, good people to work for. And
the work is hard, but you do get paid well for it. And like I said, you're treated very well by all the owners, the staff, the family.
Love and jobs ripe for the picking right across the country. And coming soon to 6 News, more from the owners of Loverberry on how governments and schools are responsible for the worker shortage. Don't miss that special report coming soon. Connor Alforque, 6 News.
Qantas is eyeing the end of 2021 for a return to flights to the UK and the US, but says the coronavirus vaccine would be necessary for that to happen. The company has still been running some very limited international flights, largely to help the federal government with repatriating Australians stuck overseas. It was also revealed that the company, which also owns Jetstar, is expected a further $100 million in losses for the first quarter of this financial year as border restrictions drag on due to COVID-19. The airline has also flagged plans to prioritise Asian markets as speculation mounts about Australia forming COVID-19 bubbles with countries that have low cases. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has said that Australia is working to reopen completely by Christmas, which would allow millions of Aussies to travel freely between states during the holiday period, with the exception of Western Australia. The PM telling reporters that WA Premier Mark McGowan has held out and the state is set to keep its hard border policy. The National Cabinet will meet next on the 13th of November. The Aged Care Royal Commission has heard that 50 people in residential homes across the country are sexually assaulted each week. Senior Counsel assisting the Royal Commission, Peter Rosen, referred to a KPMG report during his lengthy closing submissions on Thursday, with the estimated numbers of unlawful sexual contact in 2018 to 2019 was 2,520, or almost 50 per week. That includes resident-on-resident assaults, which are currently not reportable. In total, more than 10,000 submissions were received from residents, with their families, staff, providers and government agencies across Australia, with the Commission also hearing from more than 650 witnesses, including 113 with direct experiences. Counsel assisting the inquiry have also suggested 124 recommendations, including a law based on human rights principles for older people. Well, changing pace now, it's time for your Eye on Entertainment, and Channel 7 have held their 2021 program upfronts. Among a number of new shows, the network also announced that Australian Idol would be returning to our TV screens in 2022, more than 10 years since the last season aired, along with another singing show, The Voice, which 7 has poached from their rivals over at 9. Meanwhile, lesser performing shows like House Rules, My Kitchen Rules, Plate of Origin and Pooch Perfect were nowhere to be seen on the network slate for next year, and despite some rumours, there's no change in their breakfast TV lineup, with David Koch, Samantha Armitage, Natalie Barr, Mark Beretta, Edwina Bartholomew and Sam Mack all staying on Sunrise. Sport now, and the AFL has been mocked over a piece of turf from the MCG that was dug up and relocated for last night's grand final. 3x1 metre slice of the MCG City and Goal Square was extracted and driven to Brisbane last week, but wasn't part of the game like the Victorian Grounds turf employee had hoped. It sat outside the Gabbers boundary line on the southern wing, placed outside Richmond's race, which was hoped that it would potentially bring it into the action for at least a few seconds. But after all the grand plans and romance became insignificant, the concept well and truly backfired with footy fans, many calling it a stunt and a complete waste of money. What are your thoughts on the piece? Let us know in the comments section down below. And continuing with the AFL, North Melbourne have parted ways with their coach Rhys Shaw effective immediately. The Roos announced that they had reached an agreement with Shaw to depart, with 2 years still remaining on his coaching contract. Shaw had taken an indefinite break from the club after their lack of wins during the season to deal with his personal health. He joined the Roos as an assistant coach in 2019, but was thrust into the interim coaching position for the final 12 games of last year's season after the club parted ways with Brad Scott. And even though the club won the first 2 games of the season, the Roos then managed just 1 win from the final 15 matches. Before we go tonight, recapping our top story, punches have been thrown, police horses attacked and flares let off during chaotic scenes at anti-lockdown demonstrations in the CBD. The protest started at about 2 p.m. on Friday and is one of the larger events of its kind over the past few months against Premier Daniel Andrews' measures to control COVID-19 infections, even after the Premier announced the easing of restrictions across Melbourne, including expanding the 5-kilometre rule to 25 kilometres. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with all the latest news on all our social pages. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.